All right, hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Mark of Balance. My name is Mark, and today I'm going to be giving you part two to me and Jen's read through of the Duel of the Fates script, the original script for episode 9 of Star Wars, the end of the Skywalker saga. I'm not going to waste any of your time. Going to get you right back into part two, and I hope you enjoy. Yeah.
So next we have Ray and
So
Poe.
then Rey and Poe are on a market planet. There's
Ray.
lots of lights, and it's basically like I think of it as a port town kind of because they're saying like people are sailing. It's a big market town. There's lights. I'm thinking of
Oh, I
like
kind of envisioned it more like kind of like that desert planet they ended up going to, because they describe her as dressing in like a sari type of robe. So I kind of envisioned it as like this like warm Indian
I mean,
reference type
India has
planet.
ports. India has ports, right?
I guess so.
Yes, I think of it as a port town. Sure, maybe in warmer climates, more tropical zones. But I did like that. There was this like sailing element to it, and Poe's like, I remember sailing here, and it kind of gives it a good segue into how they can talk about their past because he's talking about his childhood here sailing, and
Mhm.
Rey talks about her parents before they left, and she was like, I waited for them because she missed their love, but she's like, oh, but I'm no one, so I don't really matter, and Poe says the line that really stays with this movie is no one is no one,
Yeah,
and they kind of keep using that line later on, which it's a cool line. I
that's a
respect
great
the line.
motif for this script
Yeah.
and this story and this character.
So basically they're still being hunted, but they're looking for this cartographer, this force cartographer, basically. So they're getting hunted by these mecha troopers, and they are hiding, and the mecha troopers are getting close, and then Rey and Poe kiss to hide. It's like the classic scene in anything when two people are hiding and they're really close, and they're like, oh no, they're gonna see us.
That was
Wait, I know how we can hide, and then they kiss. That's kind of like what
such a
happened.
cheap shot.
Yeah. So Ray
I was like, really,
lies.
Ray?
Ray's like, oh, you go kind of inside her head. She's like, that was only to remain hidden, but it's like, I'm lying. I wanted that. So
Yeah, I
it
was
was a
like,
bit of a cringe eye roll thing.
such a big cringe and eye roll. I was like, okay.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll just move right along, shall we?
Right. So then they eventually get to this cartographer, and basically she's telling her she has to meditate and see Mortis, and that she must go alone. And Poe's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Once again, my beloved cannot go alone.
We are now on
And
page 52, and my love has only grown stronger.
right.
And now we have kissed.
yes,
Therefore, I cannot let you go.
big movements. And then basically Poe is getting like upset because he's not involved in the force conversation. He's kind of like once again like a stubborn kid, like, oh, I want to know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. I did like this line. Ray does know where to go eventually, but I did like the big takeaway from the scene was like, is there any other path other than sacrifice? And the person that she's talking to is like, there's always another path. Like nothing's ever just straightforward. Nothing's
Yeah.
ever set in stone. So
So in this scene, or the vision she gets, she has to sacrifice herself. That's the vision.
she sees like yeah, she sees like some sort of sacrifice, whether like it's herself or something like that. So
Yeah.
that's what she
I
sees.
don't know
in
if
her
we
vision.
ever. I don't think we get this payoff at all.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
I don't even think this scene is even relevant by the end of the script, other than to get her to effing Mortis.
Just
Once
to get her to
again,
Mortis, and this other thing where there's always another path, which she said
Yeah,
to Leia
like I
too.
said,
Like yeah.
plot elements are very flimsy.
So yeah, that's what happens there. Next scene, I really don't have much for this scene. It's just basically Rose and Finn are at Coruscant on the Jedi Temple. I feel like this was very sudden. They were kind of just already there, and they activate the Old Republic tech, the beacon. Like that's kind of the scene. Like if they just jump there and they're kind of just going through the Jedi Temple and they do that. Unless
Is this the scene where like
unless I
something?
sped like a speed read, maybe I missed it, but that's what it seems like happened.
This is this. I do think this scene was funny though. At the very end, like they're trying to get it to work, and like it almost works, then stops,
hmm
and then it goes, and then it shorts out. Sparks fall. Machine goes dark. Rose. Can it be easy? Just like one time.
I know.
I do
right?
feel like that was quite funny because I
Yeah.
felt like that was pointing out like the plottiness of the plot. Like
Mm-mm.
this should be really easy, but because of
Of
the
course it's
plot, we
not.
have to make it we have to make it an issue. So I thought that was very self-aware, and I thought that was funny.
Yeah, and I believe they're there with R2 and C3PO.
Yeah.
There's much better scenes later on in Coruscant, but we can just move right along. They're doing that. So then we go back to Kylo, who is now already learning how to do this force drain thing where it's a pretty brutal scene. He's basically like holding this living organism, and it's basically like its life force is being sucked out of it, and it becomes like a husk. And Kylo feels like rejuvenated from it, and like obviously once you have some, you want more. It's basically like, you know, power. You always want more.
It's like drugs.
Exactly. So he wants more, and basically Tor's like, you have to go to that cave in the distance, so basically a dark side cave. You know,
Kind
the
of
force
similar to what happens on the second Empire Strikes Back, right? It's similar.
Yeah, kind of like another
Okay.
force cave. This is just on a dark side planet. And this kind of reminds me, this force drain is from a Legends character called Darth Nihilus. He's the guy with the mask that looks, it's kind of like a Scream mask, but it doesn't have like the mouth part. And he basically, like, his big thing was he didn't like fight with a lightsaber. He literally just drained the force out of everyone. And he got to the point where he would drain like a whole planet of their life force. And, you know, his body was so full of force that he wasn't even like a physical being anymore. He was just like, he was just an embodiment of force because he was just taking it from people. But then you get an insatiable hunger and blah, blah, blah. I didn't read it, but I know he's like a very famous Legends character, and that's where this probably came from.
That's really cool. Like, that's just like a really cool myth.
It is. Yeah, no,
That
Legends
world.
have some pretty cool Sith guys in it. So, yeah, Darth Nihilus, if you want to look into more of Force Drain stuff. So Kylo gets to the cave, and of course, he fights Vader just like in Empire Strikes Back, you know, in this cave. And he loses to Vader this time. And then this next part was very anticlimactic, I felt. He basically leaves the cave. He understands, like, he gets this thing from Darth Vader, and then he goes to Tor Valem, and he's like, okay, you have to tell me where Mortis is. This cave isn't getting me anywhere. And Tor is like, it's the well of the living force. Basically, it's where the galaxy was birthed or something like that. So it's very deep in this. And then Kylo basically just like drains the life force of Tor, and he's like, okay, thanks so much.
Peace
out. And so he knows where Mortis is, and he takes the life force from Tor. So obviously, like we said before, I like the sentiment of it, the apprentice turning against the master. It's like the way of the Sith, but in the script, I mean, it's like 3 lines. Like, it's like Kylo gets back, he's like, give me the information, doesn't give me the information, takes the life force out. So yeah, it was like, this is like 3 lines. He basically comes back, he says, give me the information, he gets the information. This time he's more powerful than Tor, to this point where Tor doesn't call him a child.
There's literally no reason he's more powerful. He just got his ass whooped by friggin' Darth Vader 30 seconds ago, and now he
just knows how to force drain now. So he basically drains the life out of him.
7,000 years worth.
Yeah, right. So I don't know. It was very anticlimactic. I like that it was the Sith apprentice turning on their master. You know, it keeps up with the lore, but at the same time, I felt like it wasn't done very good. It was very abrupt. Especially when you build up someone like Tor Valem to be this like otherworldly Sith or dark side wielder, and for him to be killed very quickly, it was just like, okay.
Yeah, and I think this was just a perfect example of, this was basically, they took the outline and just put it into the script. This is what needed to happen based off of the plot, but there was no motivation. Like I said, it's something very consistent with Kylo's side of this story, is it's just plot with philosophy. There's no real motivation for anything, and it makes it a meh.
Yeah, I agree.
But I do like when they connect it back to Rey and bring us back into Rey. Like, transitions in this script are great. Like, they'll ask a question in one scene which motivates you to read the next scene for the answer. So like for this, Kylo just got all this energy, and we snap to Rey, who feels that disturbance and like she knows Kylo's getting stronger. So I felt like that's a really good transition.
Definitely good cuts and setups for next scenes. So then they cut back to, I have them cutting back to Finn and Rose igniting the beacon, and it sends out the signal to the surrounding planets with like a hopeful message to send ships and take down the First Order. But basically, while that's happening, since it's like a force transmission, Kylo sees it, like he sees this huge beam, and he basically stops it, which I think is pretty cool. Like, he literally stops the light from transmitting, and he basically holds it up to the point where the beacon explodes back on Coruscant. So, you know, Kylo's charged up right now. Like, he's like
Yeah.
turbo dark side mode right now, and his powers are through the roof. So he's
And
able
it's
to
a
stop
power
this transmission.
escalation from when we saw him in episode 7, where he
Mm.
stops the bullet, which we've never seen happen. Like I feel like this is just that ultimate power escalation from that.
Well, we see Darth Vader deflect the bullets with his hands in Empire Strikes Back, but yeah, I agree. You like stopping a bullet was like different.
Stopping a bullet's different than deflecting.
Right. So the plan on Coruscant isn't going great. Then we cut to Rey and Poe, which this is a really awesome scene and Chewie, sorry. And this is an awesome scene where they fight the Knights of Ren on the landing pad. I'm not going to describe how they do it because it's hard. Obviously, it's an action sequence, but they basically end up killing 4 of them. They kill the one with the Darksaber, which was cool. And the way Rey kills him is with purple force lightning, kind of like in Rise of Skywalker when she gets mad and blows up that ship with the ship with lightning. So basically, she sees his helmet, and something about the helmet kind of draws her back into like a bad memory, and that's why she rages out, and she basically burns him to a crisp with the lightning and kills him, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh!" But we don't know why seeing his helmet is so triggering for her yet. I believe they talk about it later.
They do.
They don't.
They do.
Okay, they do. Yeah, I thought so. So yeah, we get this really cool action sequence. They take down 4 Knights of Ren. They take out the guy with the Darksaber. Do they pick up the Darksaber? I forget. I don't think they take it.
I don't think they take it, no, because they don't know its meaning.
Okay, so the Darksaber is on this sailor planet, so if you want it, go
We'll
find
probably
it.
have a new Disney Plus show for it.
The Darksaber travels, yeah. So
Like
this is another
traveling pants.
right. So this is another like tough scene, kind of. So basically, Rey knows what she needs to do, and she can't take Poe and Chewie there, and she can't convince Poe to leave. So then we see her use a Jedi mind trick on Poe to send him to fight with the Resistance with Rose and Finn, who need his help because she can feel that they need his help. And it's like a brutal scene because he knows what she has to do, and he knows she's about to do it, and she doesn't want to do it, and she basically like uses this Jedi mind trick for him to go, and you could see like they're both kind of like tearful because they're both like, don't do this, and it was a pretty cool, tough scene, but a good scene. Did you like the use of the Jedi mind trick in this like brutal way?
Oh, brutal. Yeah. Because I feel like we had just seen Rey use a dark side trick for good to get rid of the Knights of Ren. Granted, she did it out of rage, but that's how the dark side powers come out. Now she's using what we've seen as mostly a good side force use for something that's in a way painfully dark, making someone you love, like forcing them to do something they don't want to do, even if it's for a good reason. That's just very heartbreaking. And then like I just could see the scene playing out, and like I feel like it actually would have given Daisy Ridley and Oscar Isaac something to sink their teeth into as actors. Like I just feel like that would have been like a really satisfying like moment for them acting wise. And
yeah, I could see like Rey having her hand next to his head and both of them just like tears in their eyes, just like struggling. I could definitely see that. And Chewie just standing there like, I can't do a thing.
Chewie's just like, But yeah, I felt like this, and I felt like this would have been the moment where I would have bought their love story. I feel like
it definitely helps.
This was the anchor, and I would have done rewrites in the beginning to build up to this better. But this is where you're like, seeing them struggle so much to do this shows how like this is more poignant to their affection than anything else in the script is this moment. And I feel like it was really well done. And we've never seen someone do that before. We've never seen someone use the Jedi mind trick for other than torture and like fun and games. Like you've never seen it in this emotional manner before.
Yeah,
like
it was
Anakin
definitely new
didn't
and
even
unique.
try using it on Padme, which I feel like
he just he went straight to the choke out.
Yeah, pretty much. Hey,
so Poe and Chewie head back to Coruscant to help the Resistance, and Rey uses the Knife 9 to leave on her own to go find Mortis since she knows where it is now. Then we cut to a scene with Luke and Leia, which is pretty cool for the most part. Luke says, she has too much love and anger in her, and Leia assures him that, she has both and still chooses love.
The light.
And and they must trust Rey, which once again I really like that. They talk about the duality. Everyone has light and dark in them. You can't just be
Hmm.
all one side. So I like that, Leia addresses it. Luke still learning over here. He's still like, oh, well,
Yeah.
she's got too much of both. And it's like,
And once again, Leia is another character who's very force sensitive, very powerful, trained as a Jedi, but ultimately chose to leave the Jedi, ultimately chose not to go down that path. So for her, it's very easy for Rey to see why Rey would pick a path that she can still be good and powerful and not be a Jedi.
mhm, yeah,
And I think Luke is just very narrow in the best and the worst of terms in his ideals. He's like, the Jedi are good. If you're not a Jedi, then it's not that you're not good, but why? Like, he just sees the Jedi as this pinnacle. And I think Leia's trying to still teach him that you don't have to be a Jedi to be a force of good in this world.
well, that's also interesting because in Last Jedi, like he wanted to reject the Jedi. Like he didn't want to be a Jedi. He wanted to understand the Force as a balance. Like it wasn't just
Yeah.
a tool for the Jedi. So I don't know. I didn't
But I
love
think
Luke
because,
in this movie, but I get what you're
yeah,
saying.
I just feel like Luke's story in this part of the series is very much learning that the balance isn't in the duality, but the balance is in the lack of duality. I think because he was raised in a world where there was only Empire and his father was either a Sith or a Jedi. I don't think he has the experience to see the gray area in between. Whereas
Mm,
Leia, she was raised as a normal person, didn't realize she was force sensitive until she was already grown and it set in her ways. And I
yeah,
think when she tried to be a Jedi, it realized it wasn't for her. She just like left that life and she just continued to be who she was and just happened to have these powers.
yeah,
So I feel like as much as Luke is a force of good, and like you said in The Last Jedi, he was very focused on how arrogant the Jedi were. I think that was his disillusionment that maybe the Jedi weren't 100% good. Maybe the Jedi, just because they're Jedi doesn't mean they're good. And I think that lesson is still being learned here because he still thinks if he's still afraid that if Rey doesn't choose to be a Jedi, he doesn't know what she'll become. And
mm,
he's afraid it'll be something similar to Kylo. And I think what Leia's trying to teach him in this scene is just because she doesn't become like you doesn't mean she'll become like him.
mm,
She has to find her own path. And I think that was the line where she goes, she may not follow the path of the Jedi, but she is our only hope. And I think that's the lesson that Luke ultimately needs to learn in this part of the saga, which is there is more than one path. There is more than one answer. And sometimes it's not the Jedi, and sometimes it's not this black and white, good and evil duality.
yeah. I agree for the most part. I still do think in the original trilogy he was the one that picked the path that everyone said wasn't possible with
Mm-hmm.
Darth Vader. So I think it's something to think about. I think
To
both
chew on.
sides make sense. But yeah, so we get to the next scene. I kind of shortened this a lot, but basically the thing explodes. Rey and Finn and Rose are separated. Um, Finn basically gets away and he confronts another stormtrooper and
Yeah.
basically like tries to take his helmet off and be like, you know, you're being conditioned, like try to remember before you became a first order trooper, and basically he kind of gets through to him,
Yeah. I do
which
feel
will
like
come back around later.
this was kind of clumsy, but I like what they were trying to do
Yeah.
because like
Um,
you can't just like take someone's helmet off who's been brainwashed for 20 plus years and say it's all a lie and then be like, oh, thank you.
right,
I was
right,
curious.
right, right. Yeah.
Like it
Um,
takes a little bit more, but
yeah. So that happens. Rose obviously gets captured because we cut to a scene where she's basically being tortured.
mm-hmm.
So tough for Rose. Leia is now, I believe she's on Coruscant now. She's at Lando's pub on Coruscant where he basically like undercover serves like first order troopers.
Yeah.
And she's like, you need to help us. The smugglers are the only ones that can get through.
Mm-hmm.
But he basically says he can't. And that's pretty much the scene. I don't know if
I
there's
thought
anything
Lando was
else.
pretty consistent. Like that's
Yeah.
exactly what Lando would do.
I mean, it's what he
Ultimately,
does in Rise of Skywalker. He says like, I don't know if I can help, and then he shows up at the end.
yeah.
So, um,
Remind
and
me never to make promises.
yeah. So then we cut back to Finn, who is now in the sewers, trying to get away. And he ends up being saved by Dade, the 12-year-old that we met in one of the first scenes.
Yeah, that was a great re-entrance.
Yeah, so he basically gets him out of the sewers. I forget, was there like a big rat or like a big thing that was going to eat him or something?
Yeah, the Gryok.
Sure, yeah, something in the sewers was going to eat Finn. So Dade saves him. He basically takes him to this underground city, and it's all people who escaped during the Purge, which is the first time we hear about this Purge. So basically, I think they wiped out like a bunch of people within like some sort of radius or something on Coruscant.
Genocide?
So, yeah, it's basically a genocide. Yeah,
Genocide's back in Star Wars. First the Jedi, and now this.
Yeah, so Dade's part of this, group of people that are living underground who escaped that purge, and he's basically like, we want to fight, but we just don't know how, and Finn gives this impassioned speech to get their support to rise up, and they're all like, yeah, we're in. So, he recruits this whole underground city of thousands of people.
Yeah, once again, clumsy, but I liked the intent.
Yeah. So now we go back to Rey, who has a flashback of her parents leaving, and she's back on the snowy mountain, we think is Mortis. And she doesn't know why she's afraid. I think it says like she doesn't know why she's afraid. And then
no, they are afraid. Why are they afraid?
Why are they okay? So why are they afraid? But she doesn't know why. And then she basically cuts this ancient statue in half, like out of anger. She gets like overwhelmed by it. I think kind of like in Last Jedi when she cuts that one thing down too. And then at the same time, we get a vision with Kylo, who goes back to a vision with Han at 17 years old. And he's like, is kind of similar to the catwalk in Starkiller Base. That's kind of how they describe the scene. And basically, we had this cool little tidbit of Kylo where he's like, he's mad, and all this anger is coming from the fact that they made him leave. Like he had to go live with Luke and become a Jedi when he really just wanted to be with his parents, which I think is super poignant. And I think it's something that adds so much to Kylo because he has all this rage, but we don't exactly know why throughout the films. We think he's kind of just thrown into everything. And, obviously you're going to be upset if you're getting pulled in both directions. But I think here we finally get this deep-seated, the root cause of why he's so angry.
It makes you feel bad for Kylo for like the first time in 3 movies because it seems like this was a young boy who didn't want any power. Yeah. He didn't want to be a Jedi. He didn't want to train. He just wanted to be with his family. And like, he literally wanted to be what Luke didn't want to be. He wanted to be that guy on the farm with his family.
He wanted to stay home.
Yeah, he wanted to stay home. And I think he was, because of what he was, because he was a Skywalker, he was forced into this role he never wanted. And I think that's so sad because it became the only thing that was important about him. So then it became the only thing that was important to him.
It was his identity.
Yeah, like his identity was his power. And I feel like that was something that was put on him, a choice that was made for him by his parents and by his mentor. And I think it corrupted him. And I think that ultimately was a great choice for Kylo because it's a very unique way of getting to the dark side that only would happen to someone like him.
Yeah, like it was a good thing. It made sense for them to say like, oh, Luke understands him. He should go with Luke. But at the same time, like all he needed was just his family.
And it circles back to what Leia has learned since that. When Finn goes like, do you think you can help Rey? And she goes, she needs a friend, not a master. Like, I think that shows her growth as a character off screen. Like she made that mistake with Kylo thinking all he needed was a master.
Right.
When really all he needed was his friends and his family, which I just think is super heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. So now we kind of get into the, not climax, but the beginning of the climax. Finn kind of, inspires these people to fight back. And, there's this big fight in the streets with the First Order, the Brute troops. Basically, Finn steals a walker, and the walker gets destroyed, and then he's about to get killed by a Brute troop. And who comes to save him? The First Order trooper that he tried to pull the helmet off and tell him, like, remember before. And basically this guy has a whole squad of other deserters that are First Order troopers, and they come to help. And Finn does this cool thing. He's like, oh, did you pick a name? Because Finn, like, that's the biggest
first step.
That's the first step of, like, breaking the brainwash is becoming an individual. And he's like, did you pick a name? And he's like, yeah, I picked Raph, or is it Rafe?
I said Rafe.
Rafe. Okay, yeah. So he picks a name, Rafe.
R-A-F-E.
Yeah, Rafe. Okay.
Comment section. How would you pronounce that?
How would you comment that? I think it's right. So he picks a name, and that's pretty cool. Like, they come together there. So big battle is beginning on Coruscant.
Yeah, and I think it also circles back to the clones. That's how they became individuals, by giving themselves names. They were originally numbers and helmets and nobodies in the second movie. And then when we meet them in Clone Wars, suddenly they all have names. And like when we meet the rookies, it's when they're developing their names.
We're just numbers, 99. Just numbers.
Exactly. And I feel like that is that's a deep cut that Clone Wars people would love, but everyone else will just enjoy as well.
Right, exactly. So then we get back to Mortis, where the two sides of the Force have met. Kylo and Rey are on the snowy mountaintop. They go back and forth. They're basically going back and forth, poking each other in their character flaws. They're like, Kylo, you're just afraid. You're afraid of what you can become. You're afraid that you're alone. And Kylo's like, join me, and, doing that kind of dialogue. And
I think that was a trick, right? He was just saying join me because he wants to drain her life force. Like,
I'm sure.
He has no need for her. Yeah, exactly. He just wants her power all of his own.
Yeah, so they do the classic Star Wars banter back and forth, all that stuff.
You were my brother, Anakin.
Right. And then so this is where we get to the cool part of the scene, where Rey finally learns the truth about her parents. And it's basically that her parents were killed by Kylo and the Knights of Ren.
Which is the cleanest resolution to that problem. Why they convoluted it, I do not know.
I agree. Yeah, because this is really cool, because it's like Kylo and the Knights of Ren were basically like, well, Kylo first of all killed everyone in his
which
Jedi
would have included
cohort. So yeah, the fact that there are other Jedi out there, it would make sense that that Snoke would be like, finish what you started, kill all of that oppose me.
Exactly. And when we first hear from Kylo and Rey back in Force Awakens, they were like, oh, it was stopped by a girl. And he goes, what girl? Like
he knew. Yeah.
He knew if there was someone who got away, it would be that one. Like, it's just, Like, this is where I get frustrated, because I'm like, this would have been so much better. And why it was left on the cutting room floor, I will never understand. This was so simple.
Yeah, because they said they separated from Colin because of creative differences, and it's like, this would have been good.
This would have been a good creative similarity.
Yeah, so basically Kylo and the Knights of Ren have killed Rey's parents on Snoke's order. This obviously gets Rey pissed, and then they clash. So then we cut back. I'm sure right when the lightsabers meet, the camera would have cut to Coruscant, classic. So Leia shows up on Coruscant in the dreadnought that was stolen in the first scene, which is kind of funny because she didn't like that they stole the dreadnought. Now she's on the bridge of it, commanding it. So big battle begins. They start dropping off modified First Order ships with like paint all over them, which kind of reminded me of Sabine Wren in Rebels, of her like painting over the Imperial stuff and making it their own. I thought that was cool. And they join Finn in the front line. So we're basically got this whole battle going on in the streets of Coruscant and in the air. So cool set piece. Then we cut back to Kylo and Rey, fighting still. Rey kind of gets the upper hand, but it seems like it's part of Kylo's plan. She cuts his mask off, and he continues to egg her on. And, she gets unhinged he keeps talking about her parents and stuff. And then this is a pretty brutal scene. And then he cuts her from her cheek to her forehead with his lightsaber. And the script specifically says she cries blood, which is like, whoa.
That was rough. I loved it so much.
So she's basically blinded here, and she's kind of just beaten at the bottom of the stairs. And Kylo, stands over her and is like, goodbye, scavenger, and leaves. So she's just at the bottom of the stairs, eyes messed up, drained at the bottom, and he goes in to the main chamber of Mortis, and then the scene cuts back to Coruscant. So back on Coruscant, we have Chewie basically is flying an X-Wing, which I think is pretty funny, and he crashes, and ironically, Deus Ex Machina crashes exactly where Finn and BB-8 are. So they're all on the front lines now. I believe Rose has broken out of the torture chamber because I have her that she's at the base in the Capitol. And she's like, wait, this whole Capitol is a ship too. Like, it's not just a Capitol, it's a ship. So I was like, oh, okay. And she basically wants to disable the hyperdrive so the ship can't escape with all the leaders of the First Order so they can just end it here. Of course, the key to do that is in R2, and R2 gets shot. Oh no. R2
Yeah,
is shot.
that was so much better than whatever they did to C-3PO.
Right. Yeah, the memories thing.
I
Yeah,
want
so
a last vision of my friend.
yeah.
Actually,
So
it's
yeah, so R2 basically gets messed up here. He gets shot and he
I think
goes
he technically dies.
yeah, they describe him as lifeless.
Yeah.
So Finn, he's like working on R2. He's like, I'm sorry about this, buddy. And he takes out the memory drive of R2 and gives it to BB-8 to go to the terminal to transmit it to Rose, who's trying to turn off the hyperdrive.
I agree with what they did. I feel like that should have been a bit more emotional because of who R2 is, but
I think the next scene is the emotional part. So yeah, so BB-8's basically surrounded. Like he gets the terminal, he's surrounded. C-3PO is basically like kneeling over R2. He's like, I can't. He's like, I can't leave him. I can't leave R2. Chewie's like, we gotta get it out of here. He picks up R2 and he shoots with the other hand. It would have been really cool. He's like holding R2 in one hand, shooting with the other, and then Chewie gets shot in the knees and he falls over. And Finn is just like, oh my gosh, this is going really badly. And they describe him as like tearing up, like almost like he knows they're gonna lose.
this is how it ends.
Right. So this is like the lowest of low points. Rey's messed up on Mortis. This is not going well here. More Star Destroyers come in, and Leia's kind of just overwhelmed with the air battle, and she says sorry to Luke. Like she thinks they're gonna lose at this point. So we're at the low point of the climax.
And this is 110 pages. Like
we're almost there.
we have like 15 minutes left in this film.
Yeah. So now Kylo has entered the Well of the Force, this big arena, I guess, of Mortis where the altars are and stuff, and it's empty, which we expected because Luke said at the first point in the Darth Vader's castle, he says, this is only going to lead to nothingness. This is just emptiness. Don't follow this path. So it is cool that he gets there. It is empty. He lashes out in anger. Luke shows up to say, basically, I told you so, and says the dark side of the Force lied to him, like his own father, which I thought was cool. He called back to Vader, and he's like, the only way to get out of this rut, this pain that you're feeling, is to choose love over hate, and that's what saved my father. He chose love over hate, and Kylo's still lashing out. He's like, I choose power over love, and he tries to attack Luke, and Luke does another Force Ghost thing where he stops the lightsaber with the Force, I guess. Before Luke's still a Force Ghost, so the lightsaber wouldn't have done anything anyway. But he stops the saber, and Kylo says he will be more powerful than any Skywalker, and Luke says, "You're no Skywalker."
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah, I liked this scene a lot. I felt, and like I said, it calls back to Kylo's real pain, which was he was constantly pulled between love and hate to the point, and like his identity is power. So that's what he chooses. That's all he has left. He's alienated everything and everyone to the point where his seek for power is all that's left of him. And that's very, very sad. And I kind of wish Luke would see that and recognize that in this scene. Like, I understand his role right now is just to confront Kylo's like insecurity. But I wish Luke, for all of his Force power, can friggin' stop lightsabers and project himself across planets, but he can't possibly look his nephew in the eye and actually see what's hurting him. Like, I feel like he should have a little bit more emotional insight right now.
That was my only issue with Luke at the end of Last Jedi when he confronted Kylo as a Force Ghost, and then now like he's still this very cynical and very much focused on putting Kylo down more than trying to raise him up.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're basically like, we're probably getting in like a slow motion montage right now, of course, of things just going terrible. It's described all hope is lost.
You can hear the welling
Screams.
of the music.
Yeah. All this stuff's going bad. And then Luke basically projects this message of hope through all living beings across the galaxy, which I think was really cool that, they always say the Force connects everyone, but you usually only see it through Force users. But the fact that Luke could project this message to Rose, Finn, Poe, Rey, everyone, and he basically projects this message and is like, basically send all your strength to Rey, or at least the people close to her. He just projects the message. So basically, she's getting all these well wishes from all her friends.
Thoughts and thoughts and prayers.
Thoughts and prayers to Rey.
And good vibes only.
Out in Mortistown. And she basically stands up as the last Jedi, they describe her. She uses her wrap to, use it as a blindfold. Shout out Kanan. And as Luke disappears, like my guess is in this scene, like the camera's behind Kylo looking at Luke, and as Luke disappears, Rey is the same silhouette behind him. So that's how I guess that as like this, and that's cool looking thing.
Mm-hmm. And I see that as when they say the last Jedi rises. I mean, I get, like, once again, this is getting a little muddy, but I really don't think Rey is a Jedi by any means. And I feel like
the next iteration.
I feel like they just do that because as she literally physically rises, Luke fades. Like, almost like we don't need quote unquote Luke anymore. We have Rey now, and Rey will protect us. We don't need the legendary Luke Skywalker. We have legendary Rey. Solana, as we'll find out.
So basically, Rey has this really awesome line where she appears and she's like, "Our masters were wrong. I will not deny my anger, and I will not reject my love. I am the darkness. I am the light." And Kylo's like, "You are nothing. You are no one." And Rey says, "No one is no one." Yep. Boom, lightsabers meet. That would have been a
power moment. That would have been a power moment. Like, if you're making a montage on YouTube, that would have rang for eternity. That scene.
That would have been a moment. I really like that she wasn't just acknowledging that her master was wrong, but his both as well. Like, we were both failed by our masters as many generations before us, and she's like, screw all them.
Things repeat itself.
Yeah, and she kind of talks like Kylo. She kind of talks like Kylo, like, they were wrong before us. Like, screw them. Let's move forward with this new methodology, which I really liked.
Yeah, so in a weird way, she does kind of join him in his perspective.
So then we get, the same thing as in Rise of Skywalker. Lando shows up with a ragtag fleet of ships, and the tide of the battle turns. Basically, they come in and help save the day. Then we get a really dark scene where Hux basically realizes he's going to lose, and he takes one of his ancient sabers and stabs himself. Sambuku style, I believe is the Japanese term.
I didn't know the term, but that is it.
He kills himself, and it's with a purple blade, which, if it's a relic, we think it might be Mace's blade. But there is a really brutal concept art of this, I believe, of Hux stabbing himself with this blade as this battle is going on outside the window as he watches. So this is a brutal scene.
I don't really know if it's within his character to do that. I think I would have built up to I like this moment, and I would have had them built up to this moment throughout the script so that this feels earned. But I do like how this ends. I just don't think it's very true to Hux right now. Like, he's kind of a coward.
That's what I'm saying. He might be like a childish impulse, I think.
Yeah, I feel like doing something like this takes a certain level of bravery. Like, that's, I don't want to say bravery. I don't know what the term is, but I don't know. I feel like it's a huge jump from some annoying brat pretending to use the Force to deciding to kill themselves with a lightsaber. That's a huge jump of a character. And I think they should have fleshed that out a wee bit more. Yeah,
maybe a little more in the later drafts. But yeah, so Hux bites the dust by his own hand. We cut back to Mortis with Rey and Ben. I think they refer to him as Ben at this point. I don't know.
Yeah,
they might have changed
page 118. It's just covered in question marks.
They changed. Okay, so
I do not like page 118. Sorry.
So Rey and Ben are fighting. His hilt basically explodes because Rey is just supercharged by the Force right now. And it destroys his hand. Shout out to Luke and Darth Vader before him. Basically destroys his hand. It says Rey is more powerful than ever as she stands over him. And basically Kylo just starts extracting the life from her as he did with Tor Valem. And his strength starts to regain, his wounds are healing, and the opposite is happening to Rey. She is falling apart now. And
because
in this
she
moment,
got all this power because all of the people who love her were sending their Force energy to her. So she was kind of doing the light side version of what Kylo's doing now. They were sending her
there.
Force energy.
Yeah.
And he's robbing her of Force energy.
Selfishness, selflessness, all that good stuff.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was reading that correctly.
Yeah. So then this is where it gets a little interesting. I think it redeems itself a little with one line, but it gets a little interesting here. So basically Rey reaches out to Ben and is like, please don't do this. And then in this moment, but
no reason for it.
Yeah. And then Leia reaches out and she's like, Ben, come help us. Come home, help us. And this
didn't work the first 3 movies. Let's see if it happens.
But it works this time.
But for no reason. It just
so I actually do think there is a reason. But
okay.
Basically there's a line that says this strikes a chord with him, and then this line itself, it says Kylo feels the very thing that destroyed Anakin, but it doesn't make him feel weak. My guess is this is love. Basically, Anakin was destroyed by love because he was so afraid to lose it, and he couldn't control the people that he loved. He couldn't protect the people that he loved. So that in his power, it made him weak because he was so fearful of it. But this time, love empowered Kylo, which is how I took it. I like the line, it didn't, but it doesn't make him feel weak.
That's such a stretch. The only connection I made to it was in the past scene where he confronts Han Solo. Han says something like, your mother wants you home. And he goes, my mother's afraid of me. So like, I guess one could argue if Leia is still reaching out to Ben, she believes Ben's still there now, even though she did not believe that 60 pages ago. And nothing's changed on her end to make her believe that.
Yeah.
That maybe because his mom is reaching out and still believes in him, maybe he's like, oh, maybe she's not afraid of me.
I once again think it is very abrupt. Like, I don't agree that literally just her reaching out to be like that is like, but I did like how he tried to justify it, that, reaching out this time with the Force, with love instead of maybe fear, or, reaching out to him to say, like, making a request, like, oh, come home, do this for us, do that for us. Like, this time she's just reaching out with pure love and affection for him. And where Anakin, reveled in love, and to the point where he was so afraid to lose it that it made him weak and turned to the dark side. With this love, it brought him back. Once again, I don't fully agree with how abrupt it is, that he's just like, oh, okay. And then he takes Rey's hand and returns her life energy to her as they both collapse.
I don't really know what the answer would have been. Like, I don't know what would have turned Ben at that point. Like, I don't honestly know. I mean,
so I think it was very abrupt. And so basically you get another version of Rise of Skywalker where they just trade off life energy back and forth at the end. And so basically Ben's dying in his moments. Instead of kissing this time, he simply just tells her what her original name was. And her name was Solana. Her name was Rey Solana.
Does that mean anything to anyone? No.
I looked it up because I was very curious. So as he first they say, as he dies with light in his eyes. So he obviously was redeemed or whatever. But Solana means sun facing in Cantonese or Catalan. It was a Spanish language. I believe Catalan. It might be Cantonese, but it means sun facing. So light, which I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
So
but what does it mean in this? What does it mean in the context of Star Wars? Nothing,
I don't know.
Right?
It doesn't mean it. I just went. I went total linguistics and looked up what Solano means, and it just means light facing. So
yeah.
So Rey Solano
covered in question marks. I don't think she needed to know her last name. She was perfectly fine being no one. I think she finally accepted that, and the fact that her last name has no bearing in the Star Wars galaxy. I think he would have had a better last word.
Yeah. So Ben's gone, redeemed to some point. And Rey is fully not alive yet. She's lying lifeless on Mortis. But this energy surround. Huh?
Even though he just gave her a life force, like, I don't really understand why she's not alive yet.
Yeah, I'm not too sure, but she's basically lying lifeless. And energy surrounds her as she's transported to this white astral plane. I kind of envisioned Harry Potter, the Deathly Hallows, like part 2. Like, she's in this like astral plane.
Professor.
Right, with
Is this real or is this just happening inside my head?
so she's there with Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Luke, and they're all awaiting her there. And they're basically just giving her pats on back. They're like telling her that she embraces both sides of herself and that she has taught them something, and that she succeeded where they failed. And then they basically give her this ultimatum, like she can either join them in the cosmic force or return to the living force where there's more pain and suffering. Obviously, just,
But
living is just pain and suffering. And she joins the living force saying, that's part of life. And Obi-Wan says, yeah, you're a Jedi, Rey Solana, but not the last one. So that was nice. It seems like they're going in a new direction with the Jedi, which I think they accept. They appreciate that she taught them something. It was cool.
Yeah, I don't particularly like it because Obi-Wan means nothing to her. Yoda means nothing to her. So I feel like it should have just been Luke. Yeah, I don't think they meant anything to Rey, so them showing up doesn't really have any, it won't register to her. And I mean, I like the idea that they agree that she ended up having the right idea, that her path is actually the next evolution of Jedi. I like the idea because I thought when they said the astral plane, I was thinking of the world between worlds.
Ooh.
That's what I thought it was. And I thought that would have been cool. I think it should have been, if she had to meet someone and it wasn't Luke again, I think if it was a world between worlds, I think she should have met, this might have been a little time trippy for Star Wars, but I feel like she should have met either an older version of herself or a younger version of herself. Kylo, I feel like there was a smarter way to do this scene, but that would have come out in rewrites.
Right. Yeah. So I think they just wanted to do a nod to the Jedi that achieved Force Ghost status before. So,
Qui-Gon, perhaps?
Qui-Gon should have been there. Yeah. So we kind of get the same idea in Rise of Skywalker. All the Jedi helped her, defeat Sidious, and this time it's all her friends. And Jedi helped her, and then she gets to, see the previous Jedi Master. So
yeah,
it was nice. Like I said, I don't think it's the best. I don't like the Force trade-off thing. I don't really enjoy, playing with the idea of death and just handing back and forth. So I still don't agree with that here. But I think it was done maybe a little better.
I do like the life force idea of the Sith can gain life force by taking it, and the light side can gain life force by being gifted it. I do think that makes sense. Maybe not all the way to the extension of life and death, but for healing purposes. Yeah. I feel like that's a natural extension of what those forces do.
Yeah, I don't I do like the healing aspect of the Force. I think
yeah,
it is cool.
I agree. I would have to agree.
So
now we're on the wrap up.
Yeah, we're on the falling action here. So basically, there's a big ceremony. They make a joke. Chewie gets a medal, even though I think he did get a medal in the book anyway. Funny. So yeah, and Poe and Chewie go to look for Rey because she's still out in Mortis, which is basically Mortis is not on the plane of existence really, so it's kind of hard to find. So they go out. What I didn't like is that Finn didn't go as well. I feel like Finn would be just as concerned to find where Rey is. But I do like
that Finn's journey is to start a quote unquote sanctuary for
a refugee. Yeah, for kids. Yeah.
And I feel like that makes sense for him and Rose because she's, like I said, the everyman. She would want to save the little guy. I feel like Finn has grown into this, taking people who are at risk and giving them a safe place. I feel like those make sense. And I feel like in a weird way, Finn is doing what Rey would have wanted to do because Finn believes she's still out there, kind of like how Ezra's still out there for Ahsoka and
Sabine.
Thank you. Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot her name. Sabine. I feel like for her, or rather for him, for Finn, it's she's out there, she'll come back, but I need to stand in for what she would have done.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do think, his concern, I think he would have wanted to be there to try and find her because, she was his first like friend. Like they would rely on each other. But I agree. I mean, he's doing what she probably would have done, and helping people. But yeah, I got the same vibes as Ahsoka and Sabine going to find Ezra out there. So that was a cool little nod as well.
Yeah, I think when I think a more final version of that would have been Poe inviting him to come and him saying,
you go find her. I got
like,
this.
I believe Rey will come back. I believe you'll be the one to bring her back. I need to stand in her place until she does.
Yeah. So
like, I feel like that would have just been the more final version of that. But I absolutely love the line, "I'll never stop looking," because then like that seals the deal for their like love story. You know, this thing they're trying to create out of literal thin air is that we know that they were so sad to be separated from each other. And now that they've completed the task, now that there's no real indication she's still alive, the fact that he's still going to look for her afterwards shows, like, I feel like that was a nice way to convince us, like, no, they're like the real deal. Like, they actually do love each other. It just needed to be built up in the first half.
Yeah. So then we cut to, Leia on this planet, and she says, she can't feel Rey, but she does feel a balance. And Finn is like, that's her. You got it. Which I thought was cool. Instead of having to, like, you shouldn't be able to, like, point out where people are. There should be a balance where, if it's perfectly balanced, you should know there's not too much light here, too much dark there. Like, it is at peace. Right. And the fact that there is a balance, Finn's like, that's good. She did it. She's okay.
She did her job.
And then we get a nice fan servicey scene where Leia fixes R2 and she inserts his memory drive, and you basically get like a montage of all the fun adventures over the years from R2's perspective.
I didn't like it.
Which, like, of course, would have been cool, but it would have felt so fan servicey to like just get like these clips of like Luke and Leia like hugging and Han Solo coming in to save the day. It just would have been like, okay. I rolled my eyes. I liked when I saw where we were going with it. I was like, oh, they're gonna play Leia's original message. That's what I thought.
And I think that would have been okay. Because just having like a literal slideshow of all these random moments
as we go on, we remember.
It would have been very weird. But if it had been like she's rebooting him, and because we know R2 his memory was wiped after the original trilogy, not the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, I do think that message would have been one of his like first archival. That if they were to reboot, that would have been one of the first things that pops up. Yeah. So I think that would have been a smarter choice. And then seeing her so young, seeing her with that much hope, seeing how far she's come since the first movie, I feel like her line would have resonated better with "Thank you, R2."
Yeah.
Than just being like, "Thanks for reminding me of all the things I already know."
Yeah, it was a bit
like
of an
she never
choice,
got to see her message. She sent it, but she never saw it.
That's true. Yeah. That would have been cool, but of course, as we know, this was a first draft. So these might have changed, so everything with a grain of salt.
Yes.
And then that's where the movie ends. Finn and Rose have their refugee camp of 4 sensitive kids to live in peace. And then you kind of get Rey coming in from the horizon. Solana, sun facing horizon, right behind the sun.
And then as per Star Wars usual, the dual sun shit.
Yeah, she's finally coming home, and now she will teach the next generation about the balance within. I
do have a pitch for how this movie should have ended based off of the script. Yeah. And I wrote it in big letters all over this script. I think it should have had like an Inception type of ending.
Oh, God.
I think can you just hear me out? Okay.
Yep.
Poe and Chewie are on the Falcon at light speed. The beacon that Leia handed Poe that is like the tracker on Rey, which hasn't beeped, hasn't lit up, which is why Leia says like, I don't know where she is. I don't think she's here. I think he hangs it up where the dice used to be, which once again was kind of shoehorned in from the last movie. And they're just kind of traveling, and the thing should have been dark. And I feel like the last shot of it of the movie should have been the light blinking or the light turning on, and Poe being like there she is, like not even saying it, but just like looking at it and then like going full speed right into the future, and then they would have cut out. Like, I don't think we needed to see Rey coming back. I think if we had known that Poe was going to find her, we would have known he would have brought her to Finn. Like, I think they could have trusted the audience to infer what was going to happen next.
I think with any other movie, I'd like that ending, but I just think with Star Wars, you have to just show it. You just have to show her being that beacon of hope, coming back and getting the fun. But I do agree, it would have been cool, like if you're in the cockpit and the camera's just slowly zooming in on the beacon that's still black. You know, Poe and Chewie are doing their thing, and the camera just cuts between them and just keeps going and going. And
like
then
a long
you just
shot.
and then you get one blink and then it cuts. And then that would, like, of course that would have been cool, but I just don't know if it would have worked for a Star Wars movie.
Well, that's why I said you could have even elongated it with Poe seeing it.
And then do a hyperspace.
Typing in the location and then going into hyperspace.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
Yeah. So if we ever get a Colin cut, #release the Colin cut, I formally submit that as the ending of the film.
Yeah, I know. That would have been that would be cool if they did like they won't, but it would be cool if they did like an animated 2D version of this script or something like that. I don't know. But
maybe I mean, they're obsessed with the what if category. What if Colin had written the last movie? What would that have looked like?
Yeah. So
Eric Connolly and Colin Trevorrow.
So yeah, that's the end of the script, everyone. I hope you, of course, enjoyed it. You know, we did all the legwork for you. I think we gave you some good analysis and good visuals. Hopefully you can check out the concept art, because like I said, it is really beautiful, and it does really depict some of these deep scenes really well. Also, I just hope you thought it was cool that some of these pieces made their way into Rise of Skywalker in some different ways, but I know that was one of the surprising things for me. Was I was reading through this and I was like, wow, they definitely kept this for Rise of Skywalker, because the storylines just transferred over, you know, almost identically. Obviously some different little tidbits, but JJ definitely had stuff to work with, and he pick and chose what he did, and we got Rise of Skywalker. But you know, I think overall I can't say if I would have liked this movie more. I think it does have better themes and such. But of course, it is a script, and I think Jen knows just as anyone else does. You know, you could have the best script in the world, but if it isn't executed right, it might not be good. Or the other way around, you know, a script might be, it might not translate as well. So,
yeah. I mean, they always say script is king. Like, if you don't have a good story on the page, it's really hard to find it on the screen. But on the complete reverse end, like you said, even if you have a great script, like, it can get completely demolished in reshoots and edits, as we saw with the Snyder Cut. The script is the final version of the script of the literature of the film, but it is by far never the final version of the film,
of the actual
and
film.
It changes 100 times over. So we never would have gotten this script per se, even in a grand world. But I personally would have preferred something similar to this than whatever the junk we got. And do you agree? Would you have rather seen this movie than the one we got? Or,
like I said, I do really enjoy a lot of these scenes more, but I don't know if it would translate.
They don't even have a dagger.
They don't. Oh, that's true. Yeah, I think the dagger alone.
I feel that would have just been the winner for you. There's just no ex machina.
There's no dagger. I think the Sith aspect of this movie would have been a lot cooler for me.
Stronger.
I think there was a bigger epicness to it with the Coruscant fight over the Exegol fight. It felt more real. It felt more earned that it was back on Coruscant. You know, more full circle than fighting Sidious on this unknown regions planet, like fighting on Coruscant with the people who were affected by the purge and everything like that, and having the First Order troops come around and help too. I think yes, I would probably have liked this more, but like I said, I can't fully say that if there's no physical version of it. But it was a cool script. I did enjoy it a lot, and I hope everyone else did. Thank you, Jen, for the expertise and breaking down the screenplay, where I might have fallen short without the visual aids of cuts and cinematography and direction. But
Thank you for keeping up with my
Of course, yeah.
Brain dumps.
Yeah. But yeah, happy Star Wars podcast day, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm glad I was able to put this together for you guys for such a really cool day. The second annual of that. But yeah, let me know your thoughts when you do hear this episode. If it does inspire you to go read the script, go check out the concept art, what you thought of some of the story beats. I know I really like some other ones might have fell flat for me and Jen. But yeah, I think it'll be a really cool dialogue for everyone. Thanks again, Jen. And if you want to do any of that, find me on Instagram at *_wars_mark of balance. And, comment on the post. Let me know what you think. And yeah, if you have anything else, Jen, before I sign off, go ahead.
No, I'm happy to be originating the third appearance on the Mark of Balance podcast. I don't think anyone else has been on it 3 times.
I think this is your 4th time, but sure.
Oh, 4th. Oh, I guess, yeah,
You did 2 Clone Wars, 1 interview. This is your 4th, yeah.
And then we did, well, no.
And then you did the 1 year. So yeah, this is your 5th one. You're way off.
I'm one of the, what is it? The 5 timers club? I should get a jacket.
Yeah, I don't know if, no, I think you're the only 5-timer, yeah.
Woo! You hear that, Cole? You hear that?
Troy would have been the real competition.
Oh yeah,
there.
Troy was also beat up about it, and Pat.
Yeah,
and
Pat.
Kyle.
Yeah. And Kyle. Yeah, unfortunate.
But no, I'm always happy to be on this show. Thank you so much for picking me to do this particular episode. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I can't wait to come back.
Yeah, it's your wheelhouse. Had to bring you on. Had to bring the experts. Had to bring credibility to my show.
Thanks.
But yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force be with you. Peace.
Woo! You definitely have to split that up into 2 parts. That was
Jesus Christ.